Hi everybody, it's Annette from The Art of Intuition, and today we are going to talk about bad timing versus divine timing. Now, I don't normally like to use the word bad because it is a very polarizing word. It kind of separates us off. It's kind of a human word because the soul doesn't see in those terms. Our higher aspects don't see things in those terms. We don't see good or bad. It just is. So I was trying to think of a different word, but it felt like that kind of encompassed what I wanted to talk about. So we're going to leave it in. We're going to allow it today for purposes of the content. So bad timing or divine timing. Now, this plays into what starts to happen when we start to be able to see stuff from our higher aspects, right? And when we start being able to decode a lot of things that have happened to us and we start talking about how to build new realities, a lot of ways we learn how to do that is by building them and they fall apart again. And then we rework them and rebuild them again. And we retrofit them and we do it again. And it's really just by failing over and over and over again because we haven't yet unearthed all the information on how to do it. So sometimes we'll go back and kind of retro or go back and look at our old realities and say, okay, look at how those were constructed. That one failed. What was I doing there? We kind of do a whole forensics on realities that have crashed, the ones we're trying to restructure, the ones we're trying to align, and why we tried to align it this way, it didn't work. Now we're going to try to align it this way and it didn't work. And there are parts when we're in our beginning, I think it's more in the beginning phases, and then we start to be able to do it, I think, easier, and we can kind of pull ourselves out when we get into going into the human story of what's going on and looking at the soul purpose of what's going on. And we think sometimes we're into a soul purpose, but we're really into a human story. So that's kind of, I want to kind of start to peel that apart a little bit. So everything that happens to us, we agree to ahead of time, right? I've done numerous videos on that. People want to call them soul contracts. You want to call it predestination. You want to call it no free will. It doesn't really matter how you want to assign it, but we agree to it all. Everyone who comes into our life, they play a part they're supposed to play. And once they're done playing that part, then they leave because they've fulfilled their contract in a sense. There's no other reason for them to be there. That's why a lot of these realities start to fall away as soon as some energetic marker, a lot of people call it a switch. It's almost like a switch in the body gets turned on. And as soon as that gets turned on, because this has been filled, people go their separate ways unless they can come together for a different reality, a different purpose. But if there's no different purpose that can be agreed upon, and normally, I'm going to say 100% of the time, we're still in our human programming or even tinkering and starting our ascension or even in some stage of our awakening where we still can't see the difference here, and we have no chance of being able to let me get a new purpose and align it on a new purpose. We don't really even get what that means yet. So a lot of these just go by the wayside. They're kind of casualties of ascension. They're the casualties of awakening. We start to be able to see a different purpose, but we still don't quite understand why we can't retrofit it. And even in that time, we don't really realize that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to hold on to it, As a human, we try to hold on to it. And that headers us back into the reality. That's why we can repeat things again and again, even if it's with a different person. We'll repeat the same realities because the energetics are the same. They're really no different because we never really worked through what was really going on. For everything that happened, it's all from our highest aspects, from our divine aspects, from our soul aspects. If you just want to bottle it down to human and soul, our soul agreed to it. Their soul agreed to it. Their soul was so giving and loved us on such a level that it said, okay, yeah, I'll take this part in this movie. I'll play the bad guy here. I'll play the, I'll be rude. I'll be disrespectful. I'll be whatever I have to do. I'll be violent, whatever it is and that's what I'm going to do, because I'll agree to this. And on a soul level, they agree to do this. And by doing that, they're also taking on karma they're going to have to clear later. They're making, that soul is making a massive gesture to assist another soul. It's kind of that old adage is, they push us up. You push us up, and then later I'll pull you up. And that's kind of what it is. They're pushing us up to a higher level. They're leveling up our game. They're kind of pushing us out of one reality into another. They're allowing us to clear a lot of emotions that can go with that. A lot of emotions that go with the emotions that go with when we suffer those types of losses, when we take those ones on the chin, where these realities aren't going to work out, where these relationships are not going to work out, the job's not going to work out, you know, the financial stuff, it's all coming down around us. Whatever realities you can look back and start to pull it apart, it was all done so we could go to the next level. Even at the time, we couldn't see it. You know, we couldn't stay there anymore. You know, the reality had played out, and we just weren't ready for it to end. You know, so it's all on that soul sacred level. And on a soul level, yes, that person loved us so much they were willing to take on all this additional karma. They're willing to take that and have to clear that later. They're going to do those things because it goes back into the video I did about nature. It's that sacrificing in a sense, even though sacrificing is probably not the word I want to use, but I'm going to use it here because it's sacrificing for the whole. It's pushing someone else forward so they can now go on and do what they have to do. It's getting them out of where they are into something else. And a lot of the big shakeups we have in our realities, that's exactly what they do. Whether we want to go the way they're pushing us to go or not, that's the way we have to go because that's how it's supposed to be. So on that, from that consciousness, yes, they love us very much, right? Now, where we will get it entangled is our human conscious will come in and it'll try to paint it as, oh, they love us so much, they can't love us. I mean, you look at every cliche you see, you know, oh, they loved us so much they couldn't be with us. They loved me too much to say what they really wanted to say, or they were hurt and they couldn't tell me, or every romanticized, and we're going to bottle it down to that for now because it's usually when I see them, the reconstruction, the stories being kind of rewritten in a sense around more the romantic interest or even friends to exhibit. I see a lot for the romantic interest. Oh no, they left because of this. Or, no, it was because they were hurt and they couldn't eat. No, those are all the human bullshit things you put around it, right? On a human level, it was disrespectful. Okay? On a human level, it was not a respectful act. Whatever it is that crashed that reality. It could have been something we did, you know, and we're going to have our hand in the pots too. It was disrespectful what we did. It's disrespectful what they did. It wasn't love. It wasn't consciousness. It was not, I'm going to use the word righteous here. I'm using a lot of words I don't normally use. Righteous. It wasn't a righteous act, you know. It wasn't them throwing themselves on the sword. But when we start to story it, our human's going to story it. We put in all this stuff to make it sound better so we can keep it around, so we can try to reconstruct it, so we can not have the clearing we need to clear because we want to make a hero out of it. We want to try to make an excuse. We want to try to make it different. And we'll say, oh, you know, oh, it's just bad timing, or it was just this, it was that, just that. And in a sense, bad timing doesn't exist. It just wasn't aligned. And it wasn't aligned because we had other things we had to do. That's it. There's no more story there. And when we're in our higher consciousness states, that's what we can see. If we go past that, it's just not aligned. Now we're into the story. And for a while, we'll wrap ourselves around the story because we're supposed to be clearing the story. But you're going to find there is going to be that time when you kind of try to straddle both worlds. We try to take that soul sacred respect and then mush it into making everything that happened okay, in a sense of allowing it back in a sense of giving the person another chance to come back in and do it again, or someone else to come back in and do kind of the same things again. Because we're not saying, no, that's not okay. I understand from a higher perspective, that's your role to play. I understand that. But at the time when we're doing this, we kind of understand it, but we're still trying to paint it something else. We're still trying to make them a heroine in the story when these are not heroic acts. You know, what is happening here is not a heroic act, but we're going to try to take everything we will see from a soul level and embody it down. And embody it's probably not the word I want to use there either. But we try to bring that down and retrofit it in and give them a human excuse, making an excuse for what has happened. And that's why we loop around stuff for a long time because we're not willing to really see, no, this is terrible. In a sense, this is not love. It's not conscious. This is not something I want to be part of anymore. I understand you're supposed to do it. And on a soul level, I understand you love me. But on a human level, this is just not something I have to put my foot down. And by putting my foot down, I say the contract's over. Which means once I've done that, the reality technically has no more reason to exist anymore. It is now a completed contract. So the reality goes away. But then we try to go back and repaint it. Instead of just being able to say, no, that was it. It was disrespectful and it was over. Because I got tired of that kind of relationship. I got tired of that kind of disrespect. So there's a lot of times we'll go back or we'll be in a present situation, and even though we can see the glimpses of why on a soul level, we can't make excuses on a human level to justify the acts, to stay in the loop longer. And there will be a lot of realities where, because we're still tethered to that reality, we still want to be in that reality, that we stay. We keep making it up. We almost use the soul reason as an excuse to stay in the karmic loop longer, not understanding that is why we're supposed to leave. As soon as we can understand, I can understand. I cannot be, I cannot hold a grudge about that. I can resolve all that, the emotions that were brought up by the situation inside, and move forward. That I can do. But that doesn't mean it was okay. It just means I understand why. And I understand why it had to happen. From my highest consciousness I can get to in that moment, I can understand that. That doesn't make it okay to continue to happen. So once we kind of will work through that phase, we get to these other phases where we start to, how much do we put up with? When does it flip? When do we get to a point in our ascension where we can look and go, okay, how much disrespect do I put up with here? We're supposed to be conscious, be love. But when do we say, okay, enough's enough? And you'll notice when you start doing this, you're going to be from a completely different aspect, a completely different place. You're not going to be trying to retro the story anymore. You're not going to be trying to make the story fit, taking a consciousness insight and trying to retrofit into a human story to stay longer. You're almost going to be doing the opposite. You're going to be sitting there and saying, well, how much more of the shit do I have to take? I understand I'm here, but now I'm in a different agreement. Now I'm in a different contract to where I'm going to show you what higher aspect is. I'm going to show you what unconditional love is. I'm going to show you what that means. But to do that, we will put up with a lot of disrespect. And it gets kind of flip. But it's because we have to be able to show that. We have to be able to show we will put up with the disrespect. The caveat is, normally we're going to do that when someone is coming into consciousness. Because they don't technically know better yet. They don't know what they're doing is disrespectful. They might be starting their awakening. They might be halfway through their awakening. They might be going through what people would call the dark night of the soul. They're going through some of that point, and we will permit it in a sense. We will allow it because we understand, because we were there too. And we understand that we will put up with a certain level. But there does even come a time with that was after a while when it does not progress past that. And it's just the same thing over and over and over and over again. And they're kind of stuck. And they're stuck in it and they won't really break out of the disrespect. Then we will cut those relationships off. We will close out those realities too, because now it's kind of stepped over the line again. So we really have to make sure we do toe that line, and different parts of ascension, you're going to be in a different consciousness about what you can see. Can you see what's the best thing to do? How long do I got to stay in this? Whereas in our human, we were still kind of in those hybrid, trying to make our human realities work, even though we did understand soul contracts. We did understand, we had the consciousness to see that. We would be waiting to try to keep giving ourselves excuses to stay. you know, with all the story we put around it, you know, every romanticized story you're ever going to see about anything, you know, we will spin that thing to death. And you see a lot of that, especially when you get into the twin flame stuff. You see so much of those stories. Just the matrix of the twin flame is a whole separate thing, but you see so much of those stories. And it's just distorted on distorted on distorted. And it's funny because there are some distortions we will see even in our human consciousness that seem so distorted. Even we'll call those out, you know, especially when you see a lot of violence in relationships, but it keeps going on and going on and going on. And in our human, we'll go, well, why would you stay? It's so distorted. Even in our human consciousness, we would say that. But we kind of do the same things. It just, because it's not as severe, we think it's not as distorted. But it's just as distorted. But we kind of keep making excuses to stay in it. And then it's going to flip, and you're going to just try to get an excuse to get out of it and go, how long am I going to put up with this? I know I was in a reality where I felt like it was the same thing, right? I kept going again and again. But I knew from a soul agreement and from what I had agreed to do, I was meant to be there. And I had to put up with the disrespect. I had to put up with it because I was to awaken people in this certain space. And I had to stay there until I reached a certain pinnacle with that. And then I could leave. I didn't have to anymore. Because it got to a point where you get to the level of disrespect when we get to those different states of consciousness where we can see that we're not going anywhere anymore. We're just looping back and back. And it's now time for me to go on and do other things. And it's time for those people in that reality to go and do what they need to do for a while. Will they come back in? Maybe. Will they not come back in? It doesn't even matter. The important thing is for now, they are doing their thing. They're going to, if they want to go back and live their human life, and they might not finish their awakening for 5 years later, you'll know when you're supposed to be there. You know when you're supposed to put up with it. And you'll see where in other realities, and it's usually the realities you're really attached to, where we'll start to very much distort really what's going on and make an excuse because of us not wanting to leave it, us wanting it to be a different story. You know, people, and you will kind of come back to this a lot, and I'll come back to this all the time when I'm working through a reality, if I have an attachment to a reality and the level of respect is not there. You really look, it's like it's not a priority. You know, if you're giving 100% of your priority, and this is a good test on any realities you're in, if you're giving 100% of your priorities to this situation and someone else is not, that is in itself distorted. I don't care what else is going on with the other people in the reality. A priority is a priority, and if they're not putting in the same level of priority, there's your answer. Now, am I going to say that's 100% you're supposed to get out? Absolutely not, because that's when we all have to go inside and see what's the purpose of me being here. You know, am I supposed to stay through this? Am I supposed to show them what it means to make someone a priority, because they have never seen that? But I will tell you, when you're first going through your awakening and your ascension, we don't have the consciousness to see that yet. We're just trying to hold on. So we're trying to make it seem okay so we can stay longer, because we don't want to leave it behind. So I think that it kind of paints a little bit more picture around that. And I will see everyone later. Okay, keep practicing the art of intuition.